Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and on today's journey through the star map, we're going to be stopping by the Kallis system, one that was discovered in 2921 and is currently a forming system. Now, what makes this a pretty interesting system is that it's currently being protected by the Fair Chance Act, despite not having any native life present. And that's probably mostly due to some sentimentality of the government seeing a 9-planetary body system with a planet in the green belt that's got some chance to end up like Earth. The star, Kallis, even shares the same type as Sol, being a G-type yellow dwarf. Now, as far as the visualization on the map, it doesn't currently have the ability to show things like planetary disks at the moment, but they hope to get that in place with some further updates down the road. While there isn't currently any life of native origins here, there are a bunch of scientists that are present to study how it forms and how our system may have developed over time, as well as some military presence located on the outer edge at the observational post Griffin to ensure that illegal activities don't take place. That's not to say that it can't happen, but you do need to know that there's a military eye present. Anyone is welcome to come to the observation post, though, if you want to tour the system or maybe just take it all in, maybe do some studying on your own. But funny enough, since we're talking about a developmental cycle over millions and millions of years, most of the scientists here are pretty bored and they're ready to party. So if you've got smuggling in your mind or you just want to come and party and bring the beer fare along, you could certainly sell some goods to the bored scientist and just kind of get down. Speaking of illegal activities, if you're ever presented with an offer to buy land for cheap in the system with lots of possibilities, and that system is Kallis, you should probably take note that you can't currently sell land because of the FCA, so they're likely trying to sell you nothing for something. Now, getting to the planets, Kallis 1 is currently a forming world. It's a small planetoid currently, and it's eventually going to grow into a larger proto-planet. It's got a rocky surface and no atmosphere. And then moving beyond that, we have our first asteroid belt, known as Kallis Belt Alpha, which is a very dense belt that's full of minerals and asteroids with good content. Mining is illegal here, but if you could sneak in and you don't mind breaking the law, I would imagine that an Orion or harder to kind of detect prospector could make a killing here. You just need to know that it is a dangerous area with fast-moving asteroids, so you really need to be aware of your surroundings, and ideally should fly around it if you're in this area instead of trying to go through it. Now, this could be a cool area to kind of show off your piloting skills or really just to set up a dangerous race, but again, we'll just have to see it in person. Kallis 2 and Kallis 3 are more terrestrial planets that are currently forming, and interestingly enough, they actually share the same orbit. Now, their speeds have kept them away from each other for the time being, but a collision at this point seems imminent, which we may end up being able to see in-game, and would be pretty unreal to witness in the game. But what happens when they collide, we're not sure yet. They could both be destroyed, one could consume the other, or it could be a combination of the two with a planet and a moon or moons being the result. Beyond that shared orbit, we have another belt known as the Kallis Beta Belt, and unlike the Alpha Belt, this one is really more of a dust ring than an asteroid belt, so it would be a lot easier to transition through, though having a lot less opportunity as far as mining is concerned. And again, as far as the star map is concerned, they don't really have a way to differentiate them as far as the visual goes, but they're hoping to be able to show things like densities by just looking at it. The fourth planet, Kallis 4, is the one that looks to be the most interesting of the group, and even though it may take millions upon millions of years, it has a lot of similarities to Earth. It lies deep in the green band, it currently has a molten surface, and at about the same distance from the star as Earth is. Scientists are currently watching this really closely, as it could give a better idea of how our planet formed, and life may end up eventually living here if it ends up stabilizing and creating a crust with oceans and tectonic plates and all that kind of stuff. We won't see that in-game, just based on the time frame, obviously, but scientific-minded players could find it fun to kind of come here and see what they can discover. Kallis 5 is a rocky planet that currently has a large debris disk around it that should eventually create some moons, which we may actually start to see happen in the verse, but the planet itself has no atmosphere at the moment. Kallis 6 is another solid planet, mostly a carbon planet, formed out of a dense carbon-based disk and is still early in the development of its life cycle. This place should be a decent mining location if you need carbon, but again, you'll need to keep an eye out for the law if you want to take a prospector down to the surface. Kallis 7 is a hydrogen-rich gas giant, making it a great refueling location, which is not illegal under the FCA. Most of the scientists studying this planet are looking at the storms and how they form and are kind of keeping an eye on that. Kallis 8 is an ice giant, which basically means that it's comprised of heavier elements than Kallis 7, which makes scientists believe that it was actually formed closer to the star and moved out to the larger orbit later on after it was created. That, along with the knowledge that gas planets form a little bit quicker than rockier worlds, would give some credence to it being older than the interior planets, since they're still present and weren't ejected when it moved out. And finally, we've got Kallis 9, a dwarf planet, kind of Pluto-esque, has cryovolcanoes that shoot ice into the sky, which is probably going to end up becoming dormant at some point in its future. This is one of the potential sites of the missing Artemis spaceship, but we don't really have any confirmation at this point if it was found or not. And then in the system, you've only got 2 jump points, one leading to Oso and another one to Bremen, both fairly easy to overlook systems. So that's the Kallis system kind of in a macro view, but who would enjoy this location? Well, the only people here are military and scientists, all of whom are pretty cut off. So I would imagine traders, especially with ships like the Banu Merchantman or the Caterpillar, could bring some interesting goods in sort of a mobile type of store and make a decent profit. Also, with no economy here, they're going to really be dependent on goods being brought to that observation post. So just standard transporting of goods in which, you're bringing, I don't know, water or food or, just general items, I think would be made for some pretty profitable contracts. The only problem with that is you're likely not going to be transporting much, if anything, back. So you need to be able to make sure that you're making enough on your trip there to justify the overall expense. Being that this location is so focused on studying, there's 2 things that stand out. The first of which is that those of you that have like Endeavors and Reliance scientific ships, you may want to come here to help with the efforts, and you may even be able to pick up contracts to get in close and see what you can find. That's also interesting considering the jump point to Oso takes you to another system that has an observation area to study the development of another species on planet Chimera, so you could probably kind of get some 2-for-1 studying done in this part of the universe. I also think that the main export out of Kallis is going to be information. So ships like the Herald could probably act as a transportation means for this data to either return it to the Ark or a government agency or an educational entity, something like that. I think those with Starfares could also collect some good fuel at Kallis 7 and keep ships ready to go, as there's probably going to be a good number of military scientists and tourists that are kind of coming and going, and they're going to need to be refueled before they head home. I think the real opportunity here is going to be with some illegal activities. Despite the military presence being here, I still think, smuggling to the observational station is going to be a really good moneymaker. But even outside of that, mining is probably the most obvious one. I think criminals should be able to hide out in Bremen fairly well, and if they do need to flee, the dense asteroid belt, only 1 jump away from there to here, and the general lack of eyes in Kallis could make this for a pretty safe place to hide, even though the military is here. I don't think it's a real money-generating location for most criminal activities outside of mining, but for those of you that need to kind of lay low or hide, I think this place does offer some value. So I think that's going to be it for the system. If you guys have questions, please let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for more, and have yourselves a great day. Take care.